Humanity for me is thinking about the other person's experience. Never fails to strike me by how amazing it is that you wave someone off goodbye in the morning as usual, and I'll see you this evening, and don't forget we've got the parents' evening, or whatever sort of normal and pedestrian things that we all do, and then suddenly there's a telephone call that comes in, and that changes that, and that's got to be a real turning point in someone's life. It's an experience that cannot be undone. And then people end up going back to hospital, off to intensive care, and they're surrounded by clinical staff for whom this is their territory, this is their land, and they know what's going on, and our family members don't. And they're experts in their previous lives, they're not experts in this one. At one point they were sat facing people who were saying, we don't know whether your husband, your wife, your daughter, your son, your father, whatever, will live. And then they were left with the fact that, and we don't know if they do live, whether they'll be the same. And just think about how dislocating that is from your usual experience. So humanity for me, in this circumstance, and what we're talking about now, just simply means recognizing the impact of that change on that person, and how that change is potentially a lifetime change. And that if we don't accommodate that in our understanding of them, then we're not actually accommodating them. We're not being humane. What we learn sometimes the hard way is that you can't walk in with your expert model of this is the way we provide neuro rehab. What you have to do is sit down with that family and understand them, and understand how they communicate, and understand how they work. Because often we can think we're saying the same things, and we can think we've made each other understand each other. But actually, unless that's happened completely, what happens? We become misaligned on goals. So I can leave a family situation and think, oh, this is what's going to happen now, because that's what we've agreed. And in fact, it doesn't happen. Families seem to overturn something, or something changes. And I think it's very easy from the professional position then to blame and to say, well, we agreed this, this is what should be done. I'm the one that knows these things. And of course, that's not the way it works in reality. And in reality, as was breaking bread, sitting down with somebody, sharing a cup of tea and listening to them and trying to get where they're at. And the most difficult thing, I think, for professionals is to understand that not all family members are precisely on the same page at precisely the same time. Sometimes family members stop seeking support from wider family members on the grounds that the wider family don't live it on a daily basis and so don't understand. And I have to have the humility to sit down to go, actually, there's stuff I don't know. 32 years of this doesn't teach me, what you know about your son. It's only you that can teach me what you know about your son. Hope is, I think, one of the most misunderstood things I come across. When I talk to professionals and families about the same scenario, families are often much more hopeful, or the professionals might describe them as having unrealistic expectations. I don't think you can ever have an unrealistic expectation about your own child, and that's a child with a brain injury or without a brain injury. I think that we all have great hopes about our children and hope that they will lead good and fulfilling lives, and that they will be happy, and that they will be well, and that they will be pain-free. The hope is what enables people to continue. I worked with an amazing woman whose son had a very, very severe brain injury, and he requires 2-to-1 support for the rest of his life because of his behaviour. It's something he's not able to control, and he's in a locked setting. She spent years contacting people all around the world, explaining her son's situation, explaining what his needs were, explaining what the difficulties were, and trying to seek a different solution to see if there was in her words, she would use the word a miracle. Was there a miracle out there that nobody had failed to come up with? We'd missed the miracle that she required. When talking to her 25 years after his injury, she was able to tell me, a very, very intelligent woman, she was able to tell me that she absolutely knew her son's injury was permanent. She absolutely knew that this is where he was going to be for the rest of his life. She absolutely understood why his brain injury affected his behaviour this way. And then she said, but 1% of me holds on to hope that we can cure this, and you can't take that away from me. When her son was in intensive care, it was a good quarter of a century earlier, someone literally pointed at him and said, you need to lose hope. This is as good as it gets. Take that hope from somebody. And she said that at that point, hope was the only thing she had. Now, as a professional, I don't think we should be taking away the only thing people have got. Now, clearly, if their expectations are unlikely to be met, then our role is to work through that with people. If family members' expectations are actually causing harm, then our role is to work through that with people. It's not to deny the hope, it's to build on what we have and to seek a better understanding between us. But if hope is what drives people to keep going, if hope is what enables family members to stay motivated towards the rehabilitation and support of their loved ones, then let's not crush that. So I certainly wouldn't recommend that all professionals leave and start cracking jokes in inappropriate situations. However, when it is appropriate, I think it is appropriate, and it connects you to that person, keeps us all motivated, keeps us together, allows us to see another side of somebody, so that, you know, I'm no longer dealing just with the person whose husband has a brain injury. I'm dealing with this person who is also has another life, has a different parts to them, and they can see that perhaps with me too. And I think there's some evidence of humour within professional relationships. There's been New York research that's looked at this as being a way that helps to break ice, helps us to understand each other, and therefore perhaps helps us to recall and think more, fondly is the wrong word, think more positively about what the professional might be suggesting, or the agreed plans that you have. Perhaps they are more likely to be carried out if I feel connected to that person. So, and I think there's evidence there, isn't there, within the research of, if this goes back to the original motivational interviewing research, which is that it's less that the approach that the therapist is taking, and more that the person believes that the therapist cares. And one of the ways we can show we care is by practicing with humanity, practicing with humility, nurturing hope, having hope, but also perhaps potentially having some humour too. I think I would ask people, particularly if they are perhaps newer into this situation, perhaps it's a more recent injury, is to recognise for themselves that this is extremely difficult. There is no one out there who's coping better than them. This is difficult for all family members, and that difficulty comes because of love. This is not an accountancy procedure we're dealing with. This is an injury to the person that you love, and that's set within the context of what was ever happening in your family at that time. I would say that it's really important that family members are supported to recognise that they need support. They need their own support. It's not just all about the person with the brain injury. And that support can come from peers, from speaking to other people in similar situations, can come from professionals. And it's important that that professional understands the nature of brain injury and the nature of that ambiguous loss. So here is somebody that looks like the person that left in the morning, but they've come home, 6 months later as a very, very different person. And if the professional doesn't get that, if the professional doesn't understand that the family member is loving or attempting to love somebody who's changed, then I think the professional will fail. So it's important that the professional gets that. But so it's very, very difficult to look after yourself when you don't know what the long term holds. But I would go back to something one of my colleagues says all the time, which is that, if the boat is going down, you put your own life jacket on first, because you're not a lot of help to anyone else unless you're floating. So whatever family members can do to support themselves, however that looks, whatever that is incredibly important.